little bit more on this. Phyllis Bennis is a fellow of the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. She's also author of Understanding Palestine and Israel. Yossi Michelberg is a senior consulting fellow with the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. And welcome to the program. Yossi, I want to start with you, first of all. Alan was outlining some of the initial problems that are being faced by this situation that Donald Trump has put forward. Is there any suggestion, Phyllis, as we have you on screen, I'm going to actually direct this question to you, if you don't mind. Given the problems that Alan has just outlined, is there any suggestion amongst the Israeli coalition, Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition, that Donald Trump will actually be able to deliver on this somewhat bombastic statement that he's made?
You know, I think there are differences among the perspectives of various Israeli officials, but I think what's more important here is that whether or not it ultimately happens, and I think it will not happen in anything remotely resembling the current form, this is a recipe for permanent war. But it has another impact, which is very, very dangerous, which is that it sends a message to the Israelis in particular, where there is this struggle among the Israeli population and within the Knesset and within the government over whether or not to go forward with the ceasefire, even this moderate ceasefire that is currently holding, but just barely. And Netanyahu has made clear that he does not plan to abide by the requirements of the second and third phases. So in that context, what this message is, it's telling them that President Trump has their back, the back of the most extreme elements within the Israeli government. What we're looking at here is not only the problem of Trump seeing this as a real estate deal, as his former ambassador to Israel said. He said, I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a real estate guy, but all I see is 25 miles of sunset-facing beaches. So this is very much what Jared Kushner had said. But all of that pales beside the notion that what Israel has done in these 16 months of genocidal war has been to create the conditions to justify ethnic cleansing. Because now we're seeing the White House spokesperson pointing out photographs on an easel as if the press corps had not seen these before, as if she was seeing them for the first time, which she may have been, to say, look at the devastation. Where else could they go? They must leave. There must be another solution. They have to leave because how could anyone live like this? This has been what the International Court of Justice has said. This is what South Africa said in their appeal to the court. This has been the basis of saying that this is a genocide because of what Israel has done, the devastation it has wrought across Gaza. And to now say that because there's a problem, because people can't really live like this, as if it were a hurricane or a flood that had left this, it's an astonishing thing to see. And the notion, I think, that is very clearly being understood in Israel, as well as among Israel's supporters here in the United States, is that the Trump administration has the back of the most extreme elements within Israeli society, and that any hope of maintaining this ceasefire is a very, very dicey proposition right now.
I want to bring in Yossi Michelberg now. Yossi, Phyllis was just describing the amount of pressure or the amount of support that the Benjamin Netanyahu coalition and the far-right members of that coalition now apparently have from the United States. There seems to be some sort of symbiotic relationship that's going on between the coalition and the White House. Yet, what they are also facing is an enormous amount of backlash, particularly from Arab nations in the region, particularly, of course, from Jordan, from Egypt, who are saying they will absolutely not countenance any movement of Palestinians from Gaza into their territories. We've had the Saudis saying the same thing, and obviously the Qataris, as part of the negotiating team, reiterating that as well. Talk to us about what your assessment is about the level of pressure that there is against this move by Donald Trump and how effective it could be.
Yeah, I think obvious there is no one in the region, with the exception, as you mentioned, of the far right in Israel, and many Israelis, to be fair, that support this idea, whether they see it practical or not. But the entire region is against it. This we call it a plan, but it's not a plan. It's some aspirational ideas that President Trump came up with. A plan, it means also some coherent ideas and objectives and mobilizing the right resources in order to implement it. There is nothing of the sort. And as a result of it, it has no chance to succeed. However, it has an impact. And we see already, first, the foreign minister of 5 countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Jordan and Egypt and UAE, already condemned it and sent a letter to this effect. And every time that, Donald Trump repeats these ridiculous ideas, there is more rejection of it. At the end of the day, when President Trump talks about, on the one hand, Israel is going to end Gaza to the hands of the U.S., but they're not going to be troops. So how is it going to happen? The problem with that, it consolidates the belief among the far right in Israel that this is possible. And not only this, if this is going to happen, why not in the West Bank? And the other thing, it's also consolidate the most extreme among Palestinians. Say, listen, we've said all along that the United States and Israel is in cahoots with one another in order to crush the idea of Palestinian statehood, the nationhood, self-determination, and this will bring the opposition. Furthermore, also the idea of pushing 2 million people to Jordan and Egypt, considering, the very delicate social fabrics in these societies, the pressure on resources, the pressure in the economy is going to destabilize the area, the region. So there is no reason for anyone to support. To the contrary, it will make things only worse.
Donald Trump made clear during the press conference that he doesn't want the fighting in Gaza to start again. He says what he didn't talk about in his press conference was the continuing presence of Hamas, which was something that Benjamin Netanyahu was absolutely determined was going to be eradicated from Gaza, and that singularly has not happened. As the ceasefire process goes forward, do you think that there is a risk that, given the additional pressures that statements like this from Donald Trump bring to the Palestinian people and bring particularly to those in Gaza, that there might be some sort of backlash, whether it's violent or whether it's a demonstration, whatever, that would allow Israel to say, no, Hamas has broken the ceasefire deal is all off, right, we're going back in?
I think, first of all, we are in the early stages of phase 1. Phase 2 should have been started negotiated, but we see it's in a very, very slow pace. We are still talking about the return of hostages, release of Palestinian prisoners. There is real danger that this ceasefire deal, which is for now, it's more tools than a ceasefire, is going to fall apart even before the first phase comes to an end and completed. At the end of the day, from Netanyahu's point of view, in order to keep his coalition together, he needs to ensure that phase 2 never takes place, because it entails also end of war, and some of the coalition members are objecting this. People like Bezalel Smotrich, he already lost one far-right party, and the majority he has right now in the Knesset is very slim. And also because of his corruption trial, he can't afford losing this coalition. So there are a lot of complexity there. As far as the Palestinian society, yes, it has to make a decision what kind of governance it wants. But at the same time that Benjamin Netanyahu opposes the Hamas, he also opposes the PA. He won't allow the PA to actually govern Gaza. He needs to make a decision. It's if he objects the PA, it probably will be Hamas who governs Gaza.
Yeah. Phyllis, I want to ask you, in your assessment, what do you think the dynamic is between Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition and the US? Who is essentially, if you like, leading this against this move against Gaza, this future plan for Gaza? How do you assess that?
Well, I think that we have to be clear that in Israel, despite major disagreements within the governing coalition, between the governing coalition and the opposition, within the Knesset more broadly, and within society, there are significant disagreements, but there is very strong support for this war. And the notion of continuing the war once all the hostages have been released, if they are, is a very strongly held position, and I think probably a majority position. It certainly is Netanyahu's position. What we're seeing, for example, with Netanyahu's visit to the United States, his time in Washington these last couple of days, who is he meeting with? He's meeting with, besides Trump, he's meeting with Elon Musk, who just a couple of weeks ago was showing a Nazi salute at the inauguration, and yet talking about anti-Semitism. We see that he's meeting with people like Reverend John Hagee and the former, the choice of President Trump for his new ambassador to Israel, both of whom are hardcore Christian Zionists who believe that the second coming of Christ requires the ingathering of Jews in Palestine, at which point Jews will have the choice of either convert or die, which I must say as a Jew, I'm not exactly thrilled with that choice. But this is the reality of who they're dealing with, and yet they are weaponizing the claim of fighting against anti-Semitism on both sides, both in Israel and in key sources in the United States. If we look at the Jewish organizations right now in the US, what we're seeing is that the most important, most influential, historically the closest to Israel over the years, the Council of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations, and of course AIPAC, so far they have said nothing about this proposal. They have responded to the fact that Trump has indicated his great support for Israel, and they're happy about that. They've not said a word about this claim about Gaza. Those who have supported it are the far right of the Zionist movement in the US, such as the Zionist Organization of America and others. So it's a real shift in who right now has more power and influence in Congress, in the White House. It's not so much, and this is all relative, of course, it's not as much AIPAC or the Council of Presidents, despite their having far more funding ability to influence elections. It's the far right extreme Zionist organizations like the ZOA that are now emerging as the ones who people want to talk to when they come from Israel. So I think that's representing a kind of a shift that is underway here. But the most important thing is that this is now the president of the United States. It's not his son-in-law who was spouting some ideas at a conference a few years ago about seeing Gaza as a land deal, as a development deal. This is the president who's now calling for this. And while I don't think there's a chance that he can make it happen on the terms he's envisioning, this is a dream, this is a pipe dream, but his claiming that this is what he wants is a clear indication to the far right in Israel that they have the green light that they have been seeking. They had a green light in terms of weapons from the Biden administration, and that has not changed. Just yesterday, we are learning that the White House is about to ask Congress to approve another $1 billion worth of weapons, including 4,700 1,000-pound bombs and armored bulldozers to destroy Palestinian buildings. And this, I have no doubt, will be approved. This is coming out of money that was already approved to be given to Israel in military aid. So what we're seeing here is a continuation of that, but without even the pretense that we saw during the Biden administration of claimed concern about what is happening to Palestinian civilians. We're not seeing that at all. This is the green light that the far right of Israel has been waiting for.
Phyllis Bennis, Yossi Michelberg, we appreciate you both being with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.